back with comedian David Boyle, and I'm quitting alcohol. So here we are with the first episode of Boyle Reflects. Boyle reflects on his own podcast. So I began the traumatic experience of listening to this podcast, and I put it off till very late in the week because I was just like, I need to be emotionally prepared for it, to be honest with you. Every time I thought about it, I got like this sick butterfly feeling in my stomach. I was like, oh God, do I really want to go back there and listen to this shit? It was a daunting thought, so I kept on putting it off. And then finally I'm like, just do it. Just fucking listen to the first one and just move to the second one. I'm just like, be detached from it. Just pretend you're listening to someone else. You're just there on fact-finding missions anyway. So I did. I went back and I listened to the first 20 episodes. And I tell you what, how the fuck you cunts ever got past those first 20 is beyond me. To me, it's unlistenable. Like, I'm not sure what kept people going after those first 20 episodes. I suppose there's like a curiosity, like what the hell's going to happen with this cunt? Who is this cunt, by the way? That's what I kept on thinking. I'm like, what was I thinking? I don't know what I was thinking. I obviously wasn't. If you're thinking clearly, then you wouldn't start a podcast like this. You would just have some self-respect and do things quietly. Fight your own battle in silence. Oh man, that was a traumatic experience, those first 20. I can hear it in my voice. There's no confidence at all. It's so shaky. There's so much hesitation. I don't know what I'm doing there. I remember at the start, it was always a stretch to get 5 minutes. I was struggling to get 5 minutes. When I do 6 minutes, it was like, oh my God, how did I do 6 minutes? Now I have to physically stop myself from doing over 10. I could just keep going, and it doesn't have to be about anything anymore either. It can just be about a spoon. 15 minutes on a spoon. But back then, oh God, it was tough. But I can hear it in my voice. I'm like, oh, you were built on nothing. There was no foundations there. There was no confidence at all. And I sounded like such a miserable cunt. I suppose that's something that probably attracted some of you miserable cunts. It probably would have attracted me, actually, being the miserable cunt I was at the time, if I heard someone saying that stuff. I don't know. But for me, listening back, tough. I also noticed in the first 20 episodes, I said something about suicide. I mentioned suicide almost once an episode for the first 20 episodes. On average, some episodes I wouldn't even mention suicide. Some other episodes I'd mention it 3 or 4 times. That was interesting to me as well because I don't remember saying it that much. I really had no idea what I was doing. It's such a strange experience as well because I'm listening to it back and my voice does sound a bit the same. Well, it does sound the same. It's me speaking, obviously, but it just feels so much different now. To me, it sounded like I was a kid. Just a kid just flailing away out there. I wasn't. I had my own kid already, but it felt like, I don't know, there wasn't much power behind the voice. Now there's power. Now there's authority. Very humbling experience. I remember back in those early days when I was doing the recordings, I would finish work doing dogging. I was a dogman. I started the podcast before I even got my crane license, I think. So I'd be busting my balls all day, come back, do it, and I would procrastinate for hours because I was so nervous and so unsure of what the fuck I was going to talk about that I would just leave it till the very last minute, like just before 12 a.m. I'm like, I've got to do it now. Just do it. It was like a traumatic experience, every one of those early episodes. For like the first year, it was tough. Now I can just bust one out whenever. I've done 1,340 fucking 3 of the cunts. Back then, it'd only been 20. Oh my God. When I was listening, I'm at 20 episodes. And in my calculations, there's been a couple of things that are kind of like whatever, but not enough to keep listening to all 20 episodes. I'm like, when the fuck does this podcast get good? Because I thought it was a banger from the very beginning. I thought I was just fire from the word go. That's how fucking delusional I am. I'm like, is it the hundreds or 200s? One of my friends once said to me, it doesn't start getting good until about episode 250. I'm like, no. Number 1 was fire. Day 1 was fire. 2, 3. It was pretty much fire from the beginning. How wrong I was and how traumatic this experience is going to be. That's just the first 20. One of the things that kept me going as well, even though I would have just done it into the ether, even if no one was listening, I would have continued doing it no matter what. But one of the things that made me think everything that I was doing was fire was early on, I was getting listeners. Like almost immediately, there was like 15, 20 listeners per day. And then I think it was like a week or 2 in, there was a big spike. I got 100 listeners on one of the days. And that might as well have been 1 million listeners. That was the most success I'd ever had in my entire life. Was that spike of 100 listeners. So I was basically considering myself a New York Times bestseller when I got that spike. And I'm like, I'm connecting with the people. That's what I'm doing here. I'm making connections. So that little spike, which was actually the biggest spike I'd ever had on anything in my entire life, fueled my delusion. But here's the catch-22. And I actually said that in one of the first 20 episodes. I'm like, here's the catch-22. It was something about the parties that are on when you're not drinking, all awesome. And then when you decide you're going to start drinking again, the parties suck. Anyway, go back and listen to the first 20 episodes if you want to hear some good shit. Yeah, so the catch-22 is you need that fuel, you need that delusion to keep pushing you along. You need those tiny little wins to fuel your insanity, because you need that insanity to do something like this, to continue doing something like this. Anyway, it was a humbling, traumatic experience listening to those first 20. I'm going to have to start getting through them a little bit faster than that. Otherwise, Boyle Reflects is going to be running for the next fucking 4 years. I'll try and get to 100 next week. Anyway, that's it. If you're enjoying the podcast, obviously you are now. Who could not like this now? Nobody. That's why you should share it around. Lots of people are sharing it now. I keep getting messages from people saying, my friend put me onto it. Love your podcast, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, thank you. Thank you to everyone who shares it. That's the key, the sharing. And I know it's hard to share these days because every cunt is sharing everything to you. So I know how hard it is, especially sharing anything that's longer than a reel. So thank you very much for getting your friends and family and whoever else on board. I do appreciate that. Anyway, that's it for today, and I'll see you the fuck later.